So this morning I told two jokes to start the service and neither of them worked. But I'm feeling optimistic that it might this time. So here we go. How did Mary and Joseph know how much baby Jesus weighed at birth? They had a weigh in the manger. Okay. Exhausted and worn out, Joseph asked for a room, and the innkeeper shook his head and said, "No, we're full." Joseph pleaded, "Please, my wife is pregnant." The innkeeper fires back, "Hey, that's not my fault." And Joseph said, "It's not my fault either." Okay, look. So, all right. Woo. So today we're talking about Mary and Joseph. And so, they're the two main characters in the Christmas story up until Jesus is born. And they did all the things that were necessary for the birth of the Christ child to happen. The birth of the Christ child is the focus and the reason for the season. But I would say that the role that Mary and Joseph played is hugely valuable and often overlooked. Mary was a virgin and she was probably between 12 and 15 years old. Joseph was a simple man, a carpenter, and he may have been in his 30s, he may have been in his 40s. And they were chosen to be the parents of the Savior, to be the mom and dad for baby Jesus. And so could you imagine what that experience was like for them? How amazing, how surreal, and maybe even a bit overwhelming. And they had a lot of work to do. One of the things is, because of the census, they had to go from Nazareth to Bethlehem. That was a 90-mile trek. On foot and donkey. And then they reached exhausted, no room at the inn. And then they had to go to a cave with no help, and that's where they gave birth to the baby Jesus. But the work that they did, to me, was not just physical work of doing these things. I think there was emotional and spiritual work that they did that helped bring forth. I think they are incredible examples for us. There is much in the qualities they demonstrated to teach us about how to fulfill our role and help bring forth something greater through ourselves and into our world. I'm going to talk about some different qualities, but I'll tell you, both of them demonstrated underlying single quality that made all of this possible. And that quality was they were willing. It was the willingness of this young virgin and this older carpenter that allowed them to become vehicles through which the birth of the Christ shall happen. That the Christ light, the light of God, was born and came into this world. Willingness doesn't sound like a big deal, but I tell you it's a huge deal because it is a prerequisite for growth, for transformation, for happiness and success and doing greater things. Let me ask you a question. How willing would you say you are in general? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being highest, how willing of a person are you? Like, how willing are you to learn? How willing are you to change? How willing are you to change your perspective in life? How willing are you to let go and move on? How willing are you to forgive? How willing are you to be more honest with yourself or with the person and people in your life? How willing are you to be more compassionate and more understanding? How willing are you to be more daring and go beyond what you think your limits are? Willingness is a powerful thing that opens the doors to amazing and wonderful possibilities and creativity and opportunities. And to show how important it is, have you ever been unwilling? You ever been closed off, resistant, reluctant, rigid, inflexible, cynical? There's something powerful in the lessons of Mary and Joseph, and they all have to do with willingness. And so today we're going to look at 5 lessons of willingness that Mary and Joseph demonstrated that brought forth the birth of the Christ child. It brought forth something amazing in and through them and in and into our world. And so we're going to look at Mary first. So let me just read from Luke 26, Luke 1, 26 to 38. Here's what it says. In the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was perplexed by his words and pondered what sort of greeting this might be. The angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God, and you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be great and will be called Son of the Most High, and the Lord will give him to the throne, the ancestor of David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." Mary said to the angel, "How could this be, since I am a virgin?" The angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the Lord and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child that will be born will be holy. He will be called Son of God. And now your relative Elizabeth, in her old age, has also conceived a son. And in this 6th month, for her who was said to be barren, for nothing shall be impossible with God." And then Mary said, "Here I am, the servant of the Lord. Let it be done according to your word." And so here are the things that I think that Mary taught us. The first one is she was willing to listen. She was willing to listen to the angel of God, even though what was being said seemed so big and so impossible, so beyond her comprehension. She was willing to listen to the Spirit and the voice of God speaking through her. So how good of a listener are you? How many people would say you could probably do a little better job in listening overall in your life? Okay, about 6 of us, good. I would say if we're really honest, of all the communication skills, that the weakest one we have and the one we could use the most improvement is to listen. Sometimes we're not very good at listening to ourselves or listening to others, and especially and often not listening to God. You ever got some guidance from God to make a shift in your life or to move in a new direction or open a space for something, and you ignored it and you didn't follow it? Anybody ever not follow that inner voice? I think sometimes we don't like to listen, and particularly when something is scary or different or makes us feel uncomfortable or challenges us or that is beyond our current level of understanding. I think Mary demonstrates so powerfully how important it is. If you want to achieve something greater, you got to listen. You got to tune in to that inner voice. I believe just listening will improve our level of awareness and clarity and understanding. Listening opens a way for inspiration and guidance and knowing what is for the highest and the best. And for us to be able to be willing to listen, we've got to be willing to be still, to be silent, to be quiet, and to create a space, to allow that voice of God to speak to us. That voice is always speaking, always seeking to guide us and show us the highest and best ways. But the question is that we aren't always listening. And so listening, I would say, is the first thing that Mary teaches us. That if you absolutely want to do something greater, if you want to improve the quality of your life, take time to listen. Listen to yourself. Listen to others. Listen to that voice of God, because great things will come forth from it. And the second thing she did well, she was willing to believe. Here she was, a virgin, thinking there's no way I can be giving a baby. But she absolutely was willing to believe, even if she didn't know how, even though it was beyond her comprehension, she didn't believe. So often in our lives when something big or huge comes into our lives, we think we don't have what it takes. I don't have enough money, I don't have enough education, I don't have enough time. We always think, and then we start doubting ourselves. We doubt that we're capable. We doubt that it is possible. And the thing about it is, all things are possible to those who believe. This thing about believing is such a powerful thing. It says, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you've received it. Somebody once said that what the mind can conceive and believe, it will achieve. This power of belief creates almost a magnetic energy that attracts forth the things that we need to manifest and create the things that we want in our lives. I love that Mary, even though she didn't feel she was qualified, was willing to believe that God had a plan for her, believing that this was her purpose, and believing that somehow it would absolutely happen. And so my question for you is, think of something in your life right now that you'd like, and do you believe that it will happen? And are you willing to infuse that belief in the same way that Mary did, to believe that this thing is possible, to believe that you are absolutely worthy of it, and to believe that it will work out, that good things will absolutely come from it? She was willing to listen, she was willing to believe, and she was always willing to go to her heart and to connect to her feeling nature. In several different versions, it says, Mary pondered these things in her heart. She pondered, which is to think deeply, to think carefully. And it says, in her heart. She took her thinking nature and feeling nature and made that connection. When it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That it's so important for us to align our mind, our head with our heart, and our thinking with our feeling. That even though Mary was willing to listen, even though she was willing to believe, I love that she was willing to always go to her heart and to check in and to center herself and connect herself in that place to bring forth the best from herself. Anybody ever had something that it looked like it was right, but it didn't feel right? Or that it didn't look so good, but it felt right? Sometimes you have to check in with your feeling. Does it feel like it's the right thing? Does it feel that this is for you? Does it feel this is the best and most important thing to do? When I was in the process of becoming a minister or thinking about it, my head would always talk myself out of it. Like, that doesn't sound like me, a minister. I don't think I'll be good at that. You got to work on weekends and holidays. This doesn't sound like a good gig. Got to do funerals. This does not sound good. Yet, the few times I had to speak in a church before I became a minister, it always felt right. When I went to Unity Village for the first time just to take some classes, I felt at home. When I was in seminary, I just felt such a joy, that I only started doing church part-time. That was how reluctant I was. But it kept feeling so right that it ended up growing into full-time, and I absolutely love and adore it. Sometimes we need to say, does this feel right for me? And to take time to connect with our heart. William Shakespeare in Measure to Measure has a line that says, go to thy bosom, knock there, and ask the heart what it doth know. Our heart knows. There are times where you absolutely know in your heart it is right for you or it is wrong for you. And Mary kept going back to that. She kept going back to her heart. Regardless of all the things being said, she checked back in with herself. And I love that she did that. Mary came across to me as someone that was always calm and centered. And why? Because she always checked in with her feeling nature. She pondered these things in her heart. And our invitation and lesson from her is that whatever you got going on, whether it's about making a change in your job or dating somebody, check in with your heart. Is this the right thing for me? Whether it is buying a new house or making some decision, just keep checking in with your heart, into your feeling nature, because it will bring a level of clarity. If we want to be more centered and heart-centered like Mary, in all of our decisions, we need to take time to connect with our feeling nature. Thinking is good, and feeling is good, but together they're a huge and important benefit and a great lesson for all of us. Now let's look at Joseph. Now I'll tell you, Joseph just did not get much recognition. He didn't get much acknowledgement or praise. In the nativity scene, he didn't get the top billing. It was Mary and Jesus were the stars. They're like big names in the marquee, and in small print, Joseph and the animals. That's how it was. He is really, in my opinion, an unsung hero. Let me read you the passage about Joseph, and then we'll talk about the lessons in willingness that he demonstrated. It says in Matthew 1, verse 18, beginning, Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. because of her husband, Joseph, because he was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. After he had considered this, an angel of the Lord came to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you will call him Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All of this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did as the angel commanded and took Mary home as his wife. So Joseph was engaged to Mary, who was found to be pregnant. Could you imagine what that felt like for him? To be engaged to someone and to find out she's pregnant and it's not yours. Could you imagine what he felt? Maybe a little embarrassed, maybe a little betrayed, maybe humiliated, maybe disillusioned, maybe even angry or hurt. His ego would have definitely been bruised. To find out it is not your kid or the woman you want to marry, even if you find out it's God's kid, it's still not an easy thing from a feeling nature. But here's the thing about Joseph. He was such an honorable man and a man of such high character that by the law he could have divorced her for this reason. It would have been absolutely legal. But he didn't want to embarrass her, that he would have wanted to do it quietly. That was his initial reaction, which is still very honorable. When the angel of the Lord came and said, no, this is the thing to do. This is the right thing to do. He absolutely followed it. He didn't let his ego or embarrassed or looking less manly or whatever image stop him from doing what was right. Stop him from doing what was best. Stop him from doing what he was called to do in the way he was supposed to contribute to this story. I love that Joseph did not feel embarrassed after or felt emasculated. He proudly did what was the work he came to do. And he chose to honor his promise and honor Mary and to be of great support. Instead, what he did, he focused on God, he focused on Mary, he focused on Jesus and doing what was for the best. In my opinion, Joseph demonstrated a high level of spiritual maturity and spiritual mastery. To let go of what your ego and image is and all your attachments, to do what was for the highest and best and in the greatest good for all, was an amazing demonstration. And it was the right thing. I'm sure it was not necessarily the easiest thing, but he did that. And I think that was a valuable and huge thing that he did. He let go of his ego to do what was right and what was for the best. We all have different stations in life. It takes all kinds of talents and perspectives and abilities, to make our lives as great and wonderful. In Corinthians, it says that the body is made up of all different parts. And it's all those different parts that make the body as amazing as the body is. And it even says in there, the nose is important, but if every part of us was just nose, it wouldn't be as much fun. If every part of us was just an ear, it wouldn't be as great. If every part of our bodies were just knees, it wouldn't. But it's because of all the different talents, abilities, shapes, sizes, and gifts that's what makes our lives so great. And so what I'm trying to say with this is Joseph accepted what was his role, what was his part, not being attached by recognition or power or attention, but he took what was his. Sometimes we resist and have a hard time because of our ego doing certain things or moving in a certain direction or letting go of this or that. And I think Joseph really shows how important it is to let go of your ego and choose from a level of spiritual mastery to do what is yours in the most honorable and positive way to be of service for the best of everyone. Everybody always wants to be the star. Everybody wanted to be Michael Jordan. But the thing is, to have the championship, he needed Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson and Tony Kukoc and John Paxson. I mean, he really needed Bill Winnington and Luke Longley, all these people. And you're saying, who are they? That's right. It's all of them were needed. We always hear about Jordan, but it was the entire team of everyone doing their role and their part. And I think we all have to come to terms and make peace that this is who I am, not comparing it to anybody else, and these are the gifts that I'm here to share. And to me, that's something I think that was very cool. And the humility of Joseph, I find very, very inspiring. The second thing he did is he loved big. He loved and supported big. I mean, he loved Mary and supported her big time. He loved Jesus and supported him big time, raised him as like his own child. They had 4 other kids, and he just kept loving big as a husband and loving big as a father. And sometimes there are situations in life, it's hard to love, and it's hard to love big. In certain situations and relationships with exes or family members, even coworkers, it takes a lot to open our hearts and to love at a bigger and higher level. Anybody ever have a difficult person or a challenging relationship where it was just hard to love, let alone love bigger? And I bet every one of us has some relationship in our lives right now that's calling us to love bigger, to be more understanding, to be more generous, to be more supportive and encouraging. I absolutely bet that Mary felt loved by Joseph. And Jesus felt loved by Joseph because he is willing to just love big and to be a great support in their lives. It's a huge thing. I think life, that Joseph's role was to love bigger, and I think life is calling all of us to open our hearts and to love bigger at this Christmas time. Christmas is about the great birth, and a part of that birth is the role and the example that Mary and Joseph had. And it wasn't just about going from Nazareth to Bethlehem. It was the qualities they expressed, especially their willingness. It was their willingness that got this virgin and older carpenter to literally become the parents and to facilitate the birth of the Christ child. So my question for you is, are you willing to listen to the voice of God guiding you? Are you willing to believe that all things are possible? And this is for your pious purpose. Are you willing to pause and to connect and use your feeling nature to know if it's right for you? Are you willing to let go of your ego and do what is for the best? And are you willing to love big and to support big? Because if we want to have the most enriching and wonderful Christmas, the things we need to do is to learn from these 2 great examples and lessons of Mary and Joseph. God bless you all.